What's up, Penn Staters? Welcome to the Football Letter Podcast. This week, we are speaking with rising media star Destiny Sanchez. Destiny has a passion for sharing compelling and accurate sports stories, and it's a passion that she honed and developed while she was covering Penn State's 31 varsity sports programs as a student. Destiny is a 2024 Penn State graduate of the Donald P. Bellisario College of Communications. She is this year's recipient of the prestigious Lisa Byington Award, which is presented annually to the most outstanding female broadcaster in the Big Ten Network Student U Program. And Destiny is someone I've seen all over campus at Beaver Stadium. She is someone who I know has a very bright future ahead of her. So Destiny Sanchez, thank you so much for joining the Football Letter Podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your kind words. I'm doing well. I'm enjoying the summer, and can't believe the graduation was already a few months ago, but just enjoying being with my family.
No, that's great. I think graduates will find sometimes the time goes by really fast and quicker than you know. We are talking with Destiny here mid-July, so it's Arts Fest week in State College for those interested tuning in. So Destiny, in the introduction, we talked about the passion that you have for storytelling. Growing up, how did that passion initially spark and develop for you?
Absolutely. So growing up, I always played sports. I played softball my whole life. My dad was my coach for a while before I started playing travel ball. I played field hockey. I definitely identified myself as an athlete up until coming to college. And I was lucky enough to go to a high school with a really strong arts program, and I took a lot of video production classes. I think I've always had that creative itch. And then once I started taking those classes, I really enjoyed telling stories visually. I was making short films, so fiction storytelling. And then my senior year, it was 2020, so I only had a few months actually going to my high school, but I started doing documentary films my senior year. And that's when I realized I really enjoyed telling true human stories. So I kind of combined those two loves. I actually applied to Penn State as a film major because of that interest. And then the one club that was on campus that was open during COVID was Penn State Sports Night, a sports talk show. I tried going on camera for the first time, and I haven't looked back. So those are kind of the roots of me pursuing this career. I think that storytelling aspect has been the driving force throughout everything I've done at Penn State.
That's so fascinating. Thanks for sharing. It sounds like you've fused a number of interests then with what you're doing here, or what you did at Penn State and what you continue to do. Following up a little bit of a two-part question, at what point did Penn State come into the picture for you? And then once you did arrive at University Park, what was your mentality in terms of, now that I'm here in college, I want to maximize my opportunities and get involved like you did?
Absolutely. So candidly, in high school, my parents worked very hard for me and my sister, always encouraged us to follow our dreams. I knew early on that if I wanted to go to a school like Penn State, I would need to get scholarships or pay myself. That was our situation. I buckled down, tried to get good grades and get involved. And long story short, I was awarded the Buttonwaller Fellowship Program, which is a full academic scholarship to Penn State. Without that, and without Gary Abdullah, the Dean of Diversity and Inclusion at the College of Com, I would not be at Penn State. So I'm grateful for them taking a chance on me. And I kind of saw it as my golden ticket to just make it the experience that I wanted it to be. I got involved right away, even though it was COVID time, did the clubs on Zoom and anything that was in person. And then sophomore year, just hit the ground running, joined everything. I was trying to do internships. I started doing the live video internship, all behind the scenes with Penn State Athletics, camera, replay, holding a cord on the sideline, things like that. So I think that's kind of where I tried to hit the ground running. Got the opportunity to go to Penn State, which I'm eternally grateful for. And I tried to just make my 4 years the best that it could be. And I definitely have no regrets.
Yeah, mentioning Gary Abdullah, superstar Penn Stater, you talked about taking advantage of those opportunities. Those opportunities were available to you here at Penn State. And so I think that speaks to, the wide breadth of experiences that students have. When you look back, if I say look back, you just graduated. But when you look at your time at Penn State, and as you're entering this new, part of your life, you were at the Super Bowl, you were part of the Thon live stream. Thon, of course, the world's largest student-run philanthropy. You've covered these events that some people cover maybe once or twice in their career, and you were able to do that as a student at Penn State. How did Penn State, you think, shape you as a person, as a professional, and really put you in a great place to move forward?
I think the biggest thing that sets Penn State apart, and especially the College of Communications, all of the staff and all of the professors, they really want to push you to succeed and try everything. I think the endless amount of clubs and organizations, you can get experience right away. There's no like seniority, like you got to wait till your junior year to get involved. No, you can get involved right away. I just tried to do anything I can to keep pushing myself forward and climbing the ladder, where it was leadership positions or trying to get on camera more often during Penn State Sports Night or landing the sports anchor role for Penn State Network News. All of those opportunities are there. As long as you're driven enough and ambitious enough, you can make your experience however you want. And I think that also Dean Harden fighting for the new media center to be built. I met with Gary Abdullah every other week, him pushing me to really realize my worth and building my personal brand, utilizing those resources and seeking that help, I think has definitely helped me kind of get on a launching pad to, networking and navigating all of these different opportunities at Penn State. And you can also kind of create your own opportunities once you learn how to, network and take advantage of, I was behind the scenes during Penn State athletics. And that's when I learned I did not want to be behind the scenes, but I used that experience to network, and it led to me being the student talent for Penn State athletics. I expressed my interest in being in front of the camera, and we kept in touch. And then it really wound up shaping my last 2 years at Penn State. So I think, just seeing that the opportunities are there and, just being driven enough to be able to go and achieve, strive to get involved in those opportunities.
That's great, Destiny. So that was a good segue. And so in addition to our volunteer leaders, in addition to football lettermen, we love connecting our alumni with Penn Staters who help make game day what it is. Sometimes that's behind the scenes, sometimes it's front and center. And so, Destiny, you were at the games at Beaver Stadium interviewing lettermen and athletics personnel on the sidelines. So we want to stay here for the question too, as we see you speaking with VP, Senior Vice President for Athletics, Pat Kraft, who, by the way, like huge Pat Kraft fan, and everyone I've talked to in athletics says the same. Something you've said, which it struck with me personally, it resonated with me. I think it's interesting. I also think it's important. I think sometimes it goes overlooked. You said that players often have a bigger reason to play. I was wondering if you could maybe expand on that, talk about what you mean by that, and how does that impact your personal style and approach for storytelling?
100%. A big goal of mine, wherever I go in my career, is to kind of create a safe space for whoever I'm interviewing to be able to feel like they can pull back the curtain a little bit, talk about if there's a bigger reason why they're playing the game, why do they play the game, any adversity they've gone through. I think that in order to tap into that side of an athlete or coach, you need to establish that credibility, establish that trust. So, whether it's just starting a little conversation on the sideline at the Cape League, I tried to hang out around the batting practice, or if I'm at a game doing Big Ten Plus sideline reporting, trying to chit chat with the coach, ask about what they've worked on this week, just trying to be an approachable individual on the sideline or at the court, wherever game I'm doing. I just try to establish that first. So then when it comes down to shoving a camera in front of their face, maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable around me and answering questions. So that's definitely been a large goal of mine and something I've been trying to work on the past 2 years, just trying to be, approachable, fun person to interact with every game day. And also just asking the questions that maybe not everyone else is asking. What did you do today? What did you do this weekend? Like, why are you here back at Penn State? Like, what else are you doing other than being here at Beaver Stadium? I think sometimes asking questions about the X's and O's all of the time is kind of a repetitive question. Maybe a lot of athletes are asked. So I just try to find something that maybe they haven't been asked before. Like if I'm asking a current player, maybe like, what do you think you've learned the most about yourself in this past year? I don't think a lot of people are asking that at some time. So I think that's what I've been trying to do the past 2 years. And I feel like I've been able to get some raw and authentic answers from that.
I think that's well said. I also think that's smart. It makes sense, especially nowadays when many athletes are so much more accustomed to being interviewed. And so you need to, how do you distinguish yourself in what you're doing? And you're doing that early on. The photos that we're seeing, you watch on the video version here, like these are during the games. They're not saying, okay, we're going to stop for Destiny to do an interview now. Like it might look fun and cool, but it is a job. There are responsibilities. And so I don't want to overstate, like the difficulty of it or the, all right, Vince, we'll edit this out for the video. So Destiny, talking about your time on the sidelines at Beaver Stadium, you're there for the whiteout, for homecoming, for the enormous crowds. I'm biased. We're biased. We think Beaver Stadium is the best game day atmosphere in the country. How do you balance wanting to enjoy a moment, appreciate the moment, but also realizing, I have responsibilities and I need to stay focused and, also be aware of what's happening around me? How do you find that balance?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question because I think there were times in my Penn State career that I was so focused on getting this question right, getting my research right, nailing this interview that I kind of wasn't where my feet were and where it wasn't taking in the moment. I think my senior year, my last year doing Beaver Stadium Extra, I really tried to take in every single game. And honestly, my content was better too. My interviews were better. I think that I feel very blessed that I can do a job that is fun. I would pick doing interviews versus being in the stands any day. I've only been to one game in the stands my whole Penn State career. Actually, 2. That's a lie. I've been to 2. I went to the blue-white game this past spring. But one game back, it was the Ball State game. That was the only game I was in the stands for. And then after that, I was like, I'm going to be down on the sideline and try to find a way to work. But I just try to have fun with it. This job is fun. Sports is fun. And I think that the viewers can tell if you're thinking too much or trying to do too much with an interview. I just tried to really be myself and stand in confidence in my research and my preparation. So I think that my senior year, I was able to kind of enjoy that a little bit more. And as I keep going throughout my career, I feel like I'll learn a lot more about, just being in the moment, my preparation. I am my own worst critic. I want everything to be perfect. I'm a perfectionist. So I think sometimes maybe I get too lost in that, but I think my senior year, I did a little bit of a better job of trying to take in the moment because it was my last season as a student in Beaver Stadium.
Yes, as a student, plenty more seasons to come as an alumna. You are listening to the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Destiny Sanchez, 2024 Penn State grad. Destiny is a rising media star. She was this year's recipient of the Lisa Byington Award, which is presented annually to the most outstanding female broadcaster in the Big Ten Network Student U Program. And in case you haven't seen the video of when Lisa called Destiny to let her know about this, I rewatched it this week. I'm not a real emotional guy anymore. I got a little emotional watching this video, Destiny. When you were in that moment, when you were talking with Lisa, for the reasons that the award was established, what made that moment meaningful for you and special for you, knowing that you were this year's recipient?
Yes, that was a very special moment. They Big Ten contacted my sister and set up this whole operation to surprise me. So I was completely surprised and taken back and absolutely honored. I was a finalist last year, my junior year, and Lisa gave me a very in-depth critique on my reel and what I submitted and things she suggested for me to work on. And I think I kind of made a point for my last year to just really hone on my craft and hone on my confidence. Like I mentioned earlier, just trusting my knowledge, trusting my preparation. I think in the past I would just get too caught up in all of that. And when it came to the moment, I would get flustered. So I think that it was just a long year of trying to work on my broadcasting skills. And the job hunt was interesting that spring. Hope I can't say it yet, but soon I did land a job. But it was an interesting process, a little bit discouraging process, but finding out that I won that award was just kind of a sign like, okay, you're still doing well. And it's an absolute honor to even have my name next to Lisa Byington. She's a trailblazer for women in sports broadcasting. And Lisa's been very generous with her advice over this past year. And I'm really excited. I'm going there mid-August for an immersive experience, and Lisa will mentor me throughout the day. And I just think that a moment like that felt so far away. And then when it did happen, it was like, wow. So I'm honored to represent Penn State with this award too. And I'm excited to join Emma Carpenter and Reagan Holgate as recipients of the award.
Just want to take a moment and say thank you for sharing that, Destiny. It resonated with me when Lisa mentioned that you had applied the previous year. Mm-hmm. And you stuck with it. You had some resiliency, and so I believe we've got the video of what's going through. I mean, how often do you watch this video? And now that you're seeing it, what's going through your mind?
Hi, Lisa.
How are you? I think it's just kind of a moment of like,
hey everyone,
there's been a lot of emotions over this past spring. I mean, graduating, leaving Penn State. I don't know. I would not be as far as I am today. I would not have gone to the Super Bowl without the opportunities that Penn State offered. And I think it was just an incredible cherry on top to my time at Penn State. And it was just an absolute honor. I feel like I said earlier, like this moment felt far away. And to see Lisa's face on my phone and the big smile, like it was just like, wow. And I just think also just being a part of the sisterhood of women in sports, and it's special. And I think that women are becoming a very dominant force in the industry, and it's an exciting time to try to, have your jump start in the industry, and to be connected to Lisa, to talk to Lisa is just an absolute honor. I think I had a lot of shock and just also like relief.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Destiny. I wanted to ask you about that. And just for a little bit more background, for Lisa Byington, she has been with the Big Ten Network since its inception in 2007, was the first female play-by-play broadcaster for both Big Ten football and an NCAA men's basketball game. So very much, I believe, trailblazer was the word that you used. And so it sounds like you see Lisa as a mentor, as a role model. I also wanted to kind of turn the question around a little bit in that, given the experiences that you've had, do you either see yourself as a mentor or a role model to fellow female students who are interested in broadcasting, or are you looking at ways to giving back? Because as you said, there's a sisterhood involved there, and you can speak to some of these experiences, I would think, pretty well.
Absolutely. I have a lot of young women who are either considering Penn State or are underclassmen at Penn State, or even trying to pursue sports broadcasting at other schools. I've had a lot of people reach out to me either on Instagram or through LinkedIn, and any way that I can help people, I want to. I think it's important for women to lift each other up in any industry. And if I can help in any way, I know I still have so much to learn, but if I can help anyone kind of get that jump start, give them advice to just, get involved right away, or just not get discouraged if something doesn't go the way they want it to. I have really loved meeting a lot of other women in college, at other colleges too. The Association for Women in Sports Media was a great way for me to meet a lot of other women from other schools. I was the vice president my junior year of the Penn State chapter, and we went to the national convention in Charlotte, and I met other girls who want to work in sports from Arizona State or from Northwestern or from Georgia, and I still talk to them almost every week. So it's been nice to kind of have a little community, and if there's any way that I can help people, I want to. And I think that you never know. I have the mentality of, in class, you may be sitting next to the next CEO of a company. As much as that it's important to network with professionals who have already made it, I think it's also important to network with people that are your age or even younger or older, because you never know how maybe you can help each other out in the future.
Yeah, and when you're a student at Penn State, the likelihood that you're sitting next to a future CEO, chances are way, way higher than average #2 school in the country. You've mentioned the research that you do and the prep work that you do, and I want to ask, so while you have an on-screen role, it sounds like there's also a lot of behind-the-scenes work that you do in terms of prep, in terms of research. To frame the question, I guess, what was a prep day or a prep week like for you, the week of a Penn State football game? How did you prepare? And maybe just kind of take us through your process a little bit, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I think that's something that isn't really seen when it comes to sports broadcasting. There is a lot of preparation that comes before a Penn State football game for me. Typically, when I was a student talent, we did a weekly game preview show on Wednesdays. So typically I was a part of that in some way, shape, or form. So I typically prepared for that either Monday or Tuesday. A lot of the time I was highlighting a game that was going on throughout the week, non-football, like I'd do a field hockey game or soccer game. But for Beaver Stadium Extra, typically I would get the list of potential guests that would be at the game maybe on the Thursday or Friday before. I kind of was able to predict if maybe a Penn State alumni from the Penn State Letterman in the NFL was going to be at the game on Saturday if they played on Thursday, or we're going to play on Monday. So I would kind of like start making a list, seeing who we maybe had a bye week or played on Thursday, and start preparing some questions that if they wind up being there, they're already ready to go. But then I would typically get a list of confirmed guests Thursday, Friday, or sometimes even the morning of the game. So I would start writing questions, doing my research, seeing what they're up to, if they have a new collab with a brand, or they just had a great play or a great game the week before, just doing some research on that. And then I would get to the stadium about 3 hours before kickoff, just finalizing any questions I had. I would sometimes go out to the tailgates and interview fans before the game, or even when the football team arrived to the stadium, I would interview whoever got the game ball that they handed off. So then that's a lot of, I would either edit those videos or even like get my Premiere ready to go because I would edit everything for Beaver Stadium Extra to get my lower thirds ready. I kind of had a little system with that pre-game. So then when I do the interview, I can just kind of put it into Premiere, edit, crop it, put some B-roll on it, and then get it sent out. So I think that the game is almost like the presentation, like you're doing all your research for class and then you do the presentation. I think that it was kind of like the big game, the big show. Honestly, kind of the easier day because I did all the preparation before. But yeah, typically the Thursday or Friday or even the morning of, I would find out about who would be there. But I was able to kind of predict depending on the NFL schedule.
Destiny, I'm smiling because you sound like a coach or a player who you do so much prep work that by the time game day, it's almost like second nature where it's like, okay, all the work's done. Mm-hmm. Now we just need to go play the game or cover the game. So that's why I'm smiling. Beaver Stadium, we've talked about, kind of the environment there. You're a Penn State graduate, obviously, as we're talking about. So when you're at game day and you see the enormous crowd support from alumni and fans, when you see the line ambassadors with the S zone, while you are focused on the task at hand, what is the personal connection for you knowing that I'm a Penn Stater myself? This is, the game day environment we have. Is there a part of you that maybe processes game day a little bit from the perspective of, a student and now an alumna?
Yeah, I kind of got some chills as you said that because it is so special to me. Without Penn State, I would not be at the position I am today, personally and professionally. I still kind of get a little tear in my eye whenever it's a whiteout. My first whiteout game was actually the first game I ever worked. It was when College Game Day was in town. Just was working with them. So also just thinking about the different milestones each year kind of represented was incredible. And then also, little sidebar, my sister wound up coming to Penn State. She's 2 years younger than me, and we had a little tradition. I would look up into the student section and we would wave every game. So the little things like that, seeing my friends in the stands too. Sometimes here and there, my family would come to a game. I'm very proud to be a Penn Stater, and I'm proud to have been a part of the operation that was a Penn State football game, or even every other sport at Penn State. I definitely didn't take it lightly. It's a huge honor. And I'm excited for the day that maybe I'm back in Beaver Stadium with a different news outlet or network. That'll be a special moment for sure. But I cherish every single one of those games dearly. I'll miss it come this fall very much. It's definitely going to be an adjustment. Not every Saturday I felt like I had something to do. It's special. I mean, you can see, like, I feel like my genuine smiles are on that sideline. So it was a dream come true.
You are listening to the Football Letter podcast. This week we are speaking with Destiny Sanchez. Destiny, that was just so well spoken. I just had to take a second and let that moment breathe. So thanks for alumni and fans for tuning in, for listening, for watching. Destiny is talking about her time at Penn State. She really maximized her time. One of your mantras, I guess I would call it, Destiny, is that players have a larger reason to play. And I kind of got that from you in that, you talked about, your parents or your family supporting you and getting you into college. And it sounds like that's something that motivates you behind the scenes, that you're really maximizing your time here. And I just want to take a moment and say, like, I'm kind of getting, inspired listening to you talk about your Penn State experience. And so we'll transition here. We'll have some more lighthearted questions, some quick hit questions. Outside of communications, Destiny, what was your favorite class at Penn State?
Wow, my favorite class at Penn State. I will say probably I'll say two. I really enjoyed my sports writing class with John Affleck because I will say writing was not my strong suit going into that class. And I feel like John really pushed me to hone those skills. And we would go to games and write gamers, or even getting his advice. John is just such an experienced person. I also went to the Super Bowl with John, got to get to know him a lot better on that trip. But I feel like I learned a lot, because you have to be a good journalist, you have to be a good writer. So I feel like that was a good opportunity for me to learn those skills. And then another class, I was an entrepreneurship minor. I just found entrepreneurship interesting. And my first class ever with that was with Travis Lesser. He's with Smeal. But it was on Zoom, but I don't know, I just found it really interesting. I really enjoyed all my entrepreneurship classes. So I feel like those are some standouts. I mean, there were so many great classes. Steve Jones's sports broadcasting class, learned a lot from him. So yeah, those are probably a few that I would mention.
The Penn State icon, legend, Steve Jones, and John Affleck too, who has just helped so many and has guided and mentored so many Penn State students in the Curley Center of Sports Journalism. Outside of sports, or outside of maybe athletic venues, your favorite campus spot?
Ooh, I mean, the media center. I don't want to I was very honed in on my work, I will say, at Penn State. I was at the media center, I was at athletic facilities, but I'll be honest, like, the media center is just a great place for all the comm kids to get their work done. I would hide in this one little study room in the corner. I made the joke, like, they need to put my name outside of that room, because it was almost like my office. I was always in there. But everything you needed was in that media center. So I guess, I would say the media center is probably my favorite. Maybe second, was the BBH building. If I needed to just it be really quiet, go up to the top and have a pretty view of the Hub lawn. But yeah, so I would say those two.
So downtown State College, Saturday night, this is blue sky world. So no line, you can get a prime table. You're back in downtown for a few hours. Where are you and your three friends going in downtown State College?
I would pick Local Whiskey. I love their fried chicken sandwich. I get the same thing every single time. I'm one of those people that, like, if you like something on the menu, I'm just going to get it every single time because I know I'm going to love it every time. Yeah, so I'm going to pick Local Whiskey.
All right, there you go. See, you're very well polished as an alumna. You already know your favorite spots, know what I want. I don't need to see the menu.
Yes, don't need the menu.
Hey, this is a little kind of bringing a little bit of the personal aspects back into the interview here. When you're talking with players, have there been, one or two players who, maybe they go overlooked or they're not, the big name that everyone recognizes, but you were able to get to really know them, share their story that otherwise, people might not know about, maybe in a sport beyond football. But I feel like it sounds like maybe there have been a few people you've met who, maybe your typical Penn State alumni or fan might not know them, but, you were able to tell their story and now, folks do know who they are.
Absolutely. The first that comes to mind, I know it's not a football player, but for men's soccer, Samson Parde, he is a freshman, I believe, going to be a sophomore, maybe a redshirt freshman, but there was a game that it was like really, really close, really tight. I forget who they were playing against, but he just was a hustler, just really fighting for the ball. I just noticed just a little bit of a chip on his shoulder at that game, and they wound up winning the game, and I interviewed him, and he's young, so he's got a lot of time there. So I'm excited to see like how he grows. But it was just cool to see one of the young kids just really taking advantage of that moment. Like they needed to score. Like it was a situation where I think maybe it was 0-0 or like tied, and Penn State needed to score, and he just took it, like totally took control of it. And really, I just noticed a little like more hustle and urgency in his game. So that's somebody that I really enjoyed talking to and just asking about how he was approaching that moment. So I'm excited to see the rest of his Penn State career.
Yeah, you mentioned men's soccer, men's and women's soccer. Jeffrey Field renovations were recently announced. I mean, you talk about a bright future. Those are programs that have had proud, historic traditions who I'm excited to see those renovations and not that, I mean, they already get big crowds, but hopefully bring in an even larger crowd for those programs. You talked, which I thought was really interesting, kind of just maybe introducing yourself to the players that you interview, maybe even before you start recording. I'm just wondering if there's a behind the scenes moment that didn't get aired that maybe just, stuck with you. Maybe somebody said hi to you on the sidelines, or you a lot of times the most memorable moments are ones that don't get captured on film, but you were part of them and you saw them. Are there anything like that stand out from your time reporting?
I think actually that picture that I was interviewing Pat Kraft, that was the first official fall game that he was the athletic director for. It was a women's soccer game, and just I was chit-chatting with him a little bit before, just like, how's it been the past few months? Just making small talk. And right in that moment, I can tell the type of person Pat Kraft was, and that he was going to really fight for the athletic department and keep it moving forward. I really enjoyed that moment because I knew I would run into Pat Kraft here and there a little bit more. And after I saw him a few more times, and he kind of recognized who I was. So that's one moment that sticks out. I think that, by being at the Penn State football practice media availability every Wednesday and being on the sideline, I wasn't interviewing players, but I think one person in particular that I think just trying to be nice and approachable that made the interview really good. I think the younger player, I guess Jahan Dotson, was a perfect example where I would see him at practice, obviously, and then right after he got drafted, or right before he got drafted to the Commanders, at the blue-white game, interviewed him, and then the blue-white game after that, interviewed him again. So it was kind of like, almost like, all right, talked to you last spring about your thoughts going into the draft, and now you're 1 year in kind of interview. So I think that me just trying to be a nice person and approachable helped me in that moment, because it's not like having to do the hi, my name is anymore. Like he knew who I was and that I was gonna not, put him under the bus like in a question or anything. So I think that's one example of that.
Yeah, for sure. Jahan Dotson, all-time great Penn Stater. We've spoken to him a few times, just so insightful. As you were talking, it made me think of a question for you. When you talk with Penn State lettermen, is there a theme or two, or something that ties them together? Is there something that makes you think, yeah, this guy's a Penn State football letterman, he's played at Penn State? Do themes emerge when you've talked to lettermen all the time?
I think the pride to be a Penn Stater. They very much value the foundations that were built while being a part of the Penn State football program to be prepared to go play in the NFL. That was a common answer that I would get, just how much Penn State football shaped them to be ready for the moment that they are in the NFL. And then also the brotherhood. Even when the cameras are off, like you can just see how happy and excited they were to see their teammates again. Even the ones that were still on the team, or even just NFL talent coming back. Because a lot of them go to other different teams. They don't see each other every day anymore. So when they have the chance to come back, the West Virginia game, the first game last year, was just like the stars were out. The Micah, Saquon, Jahan, everybody was there, it felt like. And it was just almost like a whole party on the sideline. So I think the brotherhood and also the foundation that they have achieved through the Penn State football program.
For sure. And I remember that, I think that was the week before the NFL season started. Yes. So all the guys had off that weekend. Like every time you turned around, you were bumping into an All-American or, just all-time legends. And so, yeah, you were right. That was, a special night at Beaver Stadium. We have enjoyed talking with you so much, Destiny. We'll wrap up here. We'll get you out on a fun question, but you can kind of take this in any direction you want. I'll ask you to finish this sentence. In 5 years, Destiny Sanchez will be doing blank.
In 5 years, I hope that I am still doing what I love. I hope that I'm still sharing the stories of sport, no matter where it is. I think that there's stories in every sport, whether it's football or not, whether it's baseball, soccer. I hope that I can still be achieving those goals of kind of pulling back the curtain. I think a role like sideline reporting would be a perfect way to start to do that, because the role of the sideline reporter is to kind of give that exclusive view of what's going on, or even just a nugget that the viewer wouldn't have known prior to turning on the TV. So maybe sideline reporting. I know my goal is by 30 to be at a national network. So, I'm 22, so we got a little whiles away to go there, but I hope that I'm still pursuing the dream.
Well, we're cheering you on, Destiny. We have been speaking with Destiny Sanchez this week on the Football Letter podcast. Destiny, 2024 Penn State graduate, this year's recipient of the prestigious Lisa Byington Award. Just all around great Penn Stater. We have enjoyed talking with you so much, Destiny. Please stay in touch. We are cheering you on. We are some of your biggest fans, and we know that you've got a very, very bright future ahead of you. So thanks for stopping by the podcast.
John, thanks for reaching out. I'm glad that I was able to join, and I hope you have a great football season.
What's up, Penn Staters? Thanks for tuning in to the Football Letter podcast. This week, we welcome Penn State football letterman Lydell Sargeant. Lydell is a 2011 Penn State grad, and he starred for the Nittany Lions as a 4-year letter winner at defensive back from 2005 to 2008. During that time, he earned all Big Ten honors and was one of the standout leaders on the 2008 Big Ten championship team. Lydell also had an impact off the field as he represented his fellow student athletes on the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And this is the super, super cool part. We get to call Lydell a colleague now. Lydell is back at Penn State, serving as the Senior Director of Development for the Penn State College of the Liberal Arts. Lydell, we get to see you around campus now. Welcome to the Football Letter podcast, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you, John. It's always good to see you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This will be fun. So you returned to Penn State in December of 22. You were named the Director of Major Gifts at the College of Engineering. That initial reaction when you learned that you were returning to Penn State, to your alma mater, what was that moment like for you?
I mean, a full circle moment for me, John, to be honest with you, right? I had been working in, post my NFL career, I had been working in higher education for quite a while and, had a chance to really diversify my experience in higher education administration. And so to get the opportunity to come back to Penn State, specifically State College, honestly, I got, two young ones, 6 and a 3-year-old. And so being very aware of the great community of State College, particularly the academic and K through 12 academic structure in State College, right? The public education structure of State College was very attractive to me and the family. And so to be able to come back home, per se, was a joyous moment for us and the family. So we've been very grateful to be back in State College.
So as you mentioned, you've been working in the field of higher education development for about a decade now. Returning to Penn State, continuing the work that's already important, inherently important, now continuing that at Penn State, how does that, enrich or otherwise elevate just the work that you're doing that was important before, but now you're doing it at Penn State?
Well, I've always been an advocate for education, John, and so to jump into higher education administration was natural for me, right? There's a quote, and that I truly believe this is Nelson Mandela, the quote that education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world, and I truly believe that, right? And so it was natural for me to go into higher education. I was not as familiar, you would say, with the development side or the philanthropic side of higher education. So that had been a fun journey for me in transition. But to be able to, always sell access to education, affordability to education was something that I was always passionate about. And to do that at other institutions was really fun. I gained a lot of experience there. But to do it at an institution that helped develop me is a special type of feeling, it's a special type of opportunity. And so to be able to tell the Penn State story from my experience is impactful and has really been fun for me in the profession of higher education administration and development.
You mentioned affordability and accessibility priorities for Dr. Barron, the immediate past Penn State president, priorities for President Neely Bendapudi, the current Penn State president. I wanted to ask you about your current role. But before I do that, I just want to give you a shout out and mention that while you were serving as the Chief Development Officer and Senior Associate Athletic Director at Morgan State, you secured the largest ever gift to an athletic program at a historically Black college and university. And you also worked to secure an 8-figure donation for the institution. And so I just wanted to give you a shout out and congratulate you on that and let our audience know that, you are having a huge impact in this field of higher education.
Well, thank you, John. There's a lot of the things that, my parents instilled on me, but also Coach Paterno, right? Put your head down, do your work. But all of these things are team jobs, right? I'm really a team-oriented person. And so thank you, John, for acknowledging that. And those were fantastic, really transformational gifts, right? When you talk about HBCUs and access affordability. And so thank you for mentioning that, John. It was a real highlight in my career so far.
Absolutely. 3 months ago, you accepted a new position, more responsibility, I believe, as the Senior Director of Development for the Penn State College of the Liberal Arts. Just wanted, in your current role, what have you been focusing on up to this point? What have your priorities been? And then when you look ahead to the fall semester and maybe even a little bit beyond, what are you looking forward to doing in your new role?
Yeah, John, coming back to State College and working in the College of Engineering was a great opportunity for me to get, reintegrated, if you will, back into Penn State, right? And then the past 3 months really taking over for the College of Liberal Arts and working with Dean Clarence Lang here, who's a really dynamic and transformational leader, has been a great opportunity for me in the college as well. We talk about what we're at. I think we're at an influx in higher education, but I think we're quite possibly at the most important the time for Penn State University, right? When you think about the outside sentiment in regards to higher education, the decreased funding of higher education, and then you just look at the tenure of President Ben DePuty and for us in liberal arts, the tenure of Dean Clarence Lang. This is really their first opportunity to go after a philanthropic campaign, right? And it's their first opportunity to put in their strategic priorities and their strategic plan in regards to where they see our institution going over the next 10 to 20 years. And so to be able to be really in the room, at the table, and to be able to help guide and direct where we see Penn State University going over the next 10 years is very fascinating. It's complex. It's a lot of work, but we definitely have the leaders with President Ben DePuty and Dean Clarence Lang to put forth the right strategic plan to make Penn State always at the top of higher education institutions in our country.
Lydell, the way that you described it, I think is fascinating. The word that you used, some people could look at this when we look at the field of higher education in general, say it's challenging. I think you could also say that maybe it's exciting because now we're at a point where we can determine the path for Penn State, for the next decade moving forward. How much do you view that in terms of, yes, there are going to be tough discussions, we'll need to make decisions, but at the same time, we can lay the groundwork for the next generation of Penn Staters for the next decade and beyond?
Yeah, I mean that is the responsibility that's on the table for us right now, right? Is that we really are, and as you look at the budget situation that we've been in as an institution, some of the strategic priorities and plans that President Ben DePuty has already put forth, we're really at a time where we're trying to figure out and determine where we want Penn State to be over the next decade and even beyond that, right? The next 100 years, right? And so these are all very important decisions for us. It's not a one person or a select group of people. It's really a democratic process when you think about really getting the insight of the community, really getting insight of the students, the alumni, faculty, staff, right? And so there's a lot of different pieces. You have to be intentional in your planning and your processes of these things. But President Ben DePuty has already put forth her strategic plan. And as we look forward to this campaign, we're going to really see how some of the things we're willing to put some of our philanthropic dollars in and our dollars from an institution really align with that plan. And so this is as you said, it's an opportunity for us, right? It's an opportunity to really show forth how innovative Penn State can be, how dynamic Penn State can be, and how impactful it is. And so a great time for us to really set forth the next path of Penn State and the development of the next generation of Penn Staters.
So Lydell has been back at Penn State for about a year and a half. You mentioned you're a father of two. There's a lot going on campus and around the town. You talked about the educational opportunities here. What has been the best part about being back at Penn State for you over the last year and a half?
I'd say familiarity, right? All the other places I was at, it was UCLA, Marquette. Granted, I'm a Southern California, high school native, but I have familiarity with State College. I grew up in Pittsburgh, familiarity with the state of Pennsylvania. A lot of my close friends are in this state, and locally, my parents live in DC. And so to be back is something really special. to have that familiarity about the, some of the what you would consider to be mundane things, but what are the best food places to go to? What are the best places to take your kids, right? To have that familiarity has been a pretty seamless transition for me and the family. And so, that we were, really quite excited to come back. And since then, all of the things that we're excited about has really started to have come to fruition for us. And so we're very grateful for that.
I'm smiling, Lydell, because you said some things can be mundane, and I try to remind my colleagues, and I remind myself. I walk by the Nittany Lion Shrine anytime I want. Like, most Penn Staters don't have that opportunity, and so don't take things for granted. I remind myself all the time. Look, I'm very spoiled, so don't take those things for granted. You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are talking with Lydell Sargeant. Started for the Nittany Lions in the mid-2000s as a defensive back, all Big Ten defensive back. And Lydell, for the last decade, has been working in the field of higher education development and advancement, talking with him about his current role here at Penn State. And in addition to your role in the College of the Liberal Arts, you're also the president of the Lettermen's Club, have been working with Wally and the guys there. Just for a little bit of background for the audience, the Lettermen's Club has been around. It was created more than 40 years ago, kind of because Lettermen themselves recognized that, there needed to be a formal group, and Sue Paterno was a driving force behind that. Lettermen were talking to Joe about this has got to be something we do. And, folks have always said, if you want Joe to do something, or if you wanted him to do something, you needed to get Sue on board, and then Sue would make it happen. So this will sound like an obvious question, Lydell, but I think it's important to hear your perspective, especially at a place that has such a rich tradition at Penn State. How does having a Lettermen's Club benefit, one, the Lettermen, and two, the current program and the guys that are on the team now?
Well, John, I being in the NFL, right, and then also in my second career, being around a whole bunch of college football programs, there's nothing like the Penn State Football Lettermen's Club, right? It is truly one of the most unique clubs, particularly football Letterman clubs in the country. It is the highest paying dues football Lettermen's Club in the country. But when you think about the structure, and you touched on it, this stemmed out of Coach Paterno and the advocacy of Sue. But when you think about Coach Paterno's longevity here at this institution, you're talking about 40 plus years of guys that were developed within the same culture, right? The grand experiment, if you were to say, right? And so a lot of us we all have very similar experiences. We have very similar development. For better or worse, we've all kind of really, chartered our own professional paths, but we all very much do all the things that Coach Paterno really instilled in us, right? And some of those things, like wearing a suit and tie on the road, sitting, making sure you're in the front row in class, and you're always in class. All those things are really transferable skills that really follow you into life, right? And so we're all getting old, but we're all the same. And so what that does is really creates a really special group for us, a really special club for us. And so we're able to do things as a club that I think at other institutions where you would have, perhaps 5 or 6 coaches over those span of years, with those coaches come different cultures, and they're developing kids differently, and they're producing a different type of kid. And so we have a really tight-knit crew. We do job placement, we do internship placement, we do career panels, we do a golf outing. All very good things that really our job is, one, to make sure that we stay together as teammates, as Lettermen, but also that we're helping the next generation of football, Penn State football Lettermen, to succeed in life after football. And so, truly special club. I've been honored to have been the president of the club for a little while now, following the likes of, Justin Kirpakis, Brad Scoville, some really legendary folks. And so it's been something that I've been proud of and excited to hand over to the next realm of leaders.
Talking with Letterman on the show here for the last couple of years, they talk about the strong bonds that they have with teammates. Their teammates from their playing days will be their friends for life. They'll be in their wedding parties. It's that type of bond that stays with you forever. What is it like at the Letterman's Club on game day when you've got guys from all kinds of generations, different teams inside the stadium on game day? What are the conversations like, and what's the energy like in on game day at Beaver Stadium when you're with Letterman?
Well, you think about it, right? I mean, I've known. You think about just some of my teammates, right? Just alone, Sean Lee and I have been friends since fourth grade, right? Justin King and I have been friends since around the same time, right? And so, what is special with the lounge and what we do as a club is all of a sudden we're in the same place, right? And our lives have taken us across the country, and we aren't, geographically as close as we used to be, right? And so the lounge creates an opportunity for us to come back together and really just be, 18 to 22-year-olds again, right? And for our wives to joke about how, we've been talking about these type of moments, really for years, right? And so to have that lounge and that convene space is something that's very unique, something that we're very grateful for athletic administration, honestly, for allowing us to have that space of camaraderie. And so there's nothing like being in there on Saturday. The generations of Penn Staters, because we have the Letterman's Club, you have generations of Penn Staters that are still connected through the generations of Letterman, right? And so a lot of times you may have that generational disconnect. We don't have that. A lot of the younger guys know a lot of the older guys. They may not know of the glory years of them playing on the football field because unfortunately our video gets more blurry every year. Our graduation years pass, but they're familiar with the stories. They're familiar with the impact that the guys had. And so it really is a great opportunity for us to convene as a full, football family and get together and share some good stories and good jokes.
I can only imagine the stories and the jokes that are told. I can only imagine. We talk with guys like Spider and Bobby White, and it's we're gonna.
I love those guys, man. And sorry, John, I just gotta give some shout out to those two guys specifically. Since I've been back, believe it or not, I once a month I go over to the stadium. We have lunch together. Spider, Bobby, Viggy. Tommy Venturino, I'm sorry. Those guys, and those are the old guys, man, the guys that were around when I played. And so every month I get a chance to go up to the stadium, eat lunch with those guys. We have, just what you consider a bro lunch, if you will. And so those guys are Penn State royalty. So I appreciate you giving me a few seconds to give Bobby and Spider a shout out.
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. And you're so right about those guys. So many Lettermen have talked about how, Spider especially was helpful for them as their playing days, and Bobby White so involved now with the stadium. It's sort of a good segue because I wanted to get your thoughts on, I believe the number is 16 Lettermen that are back now with the program in an official capacity, either as a coach or an analyst. And it's something James Franklin has gone out of his way to talk about over the years. Bringing Letterman back to the program in an official capacity. From a Letterman's perspective, what is the larger message that you think that sends, that says, look, not only can you come back, we want you back, whether you're on game day in the Letterman's lounge, you're back with the program, because they talk about this as a place where they want Letterman to come back and visit. And so when you see so many Lettermen coming back in an official capacity, what's the larger message there, you think, if there is one?
Yeah, I think there's a large message, and I'm gonna give the credit to Coach Franklin here on this. The message is that Coach Franklin cares about this institution and cares about this football program, right? I say that because he's not a Penn State Letterman, right? And oftentimes you look around the country and you look at coaches who are not coaching their alma mater. You're not going to see 16 former players be a part of that. One, because they're trying to instill their own culture. Right, they're trying to instill their own way of football excellence and academic success, and sometimes the old cultures are resistant to change, right? And so this really is a testament to Coach Franklin. And as you look at the recruits, something that they can really put their a pulse on, that not only is he doing and talking about Penn State from a recruiting standpoint, but he truly believes in this institution. But he believes in the football players that graduate from this institution that play football here at Penn State. And so I'd say a full vouch of the hat on Coach James Franklin. And I think a very valuable message to recruits and those interested to come play football here. That the head coach here truly believes in this institution. And so, and then secondary to that, when you have 16 guys that are from a former staffs, I should say, that are part of your staff, it really speaks volumes to the development of Penn State football players, right? And the football intelligence, you could say, the football acumen that we develop is really transferable to teaching the game of football. And so all things, I think, vouch the hat to Coach Franklin, that staff, and the development of Penn State football players.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking, I was just thinking of guys like Terry Smith, Ty Howell. When you're a player and you're being coached by somebody who have literally been in your footsteps, have know what it takes to compete on the Beaver Stadium turf. I know that means a lot, and I just wanted to give Terry Smith a shout out too, just because with Spider and Bobby White. And I mean, if we're gonna start giving guys like that shout outs, like that, we might be talking here for an hour or two, because there's so many guys who that you're tight with that have had such a big impact, and like you just root for them on a personal level.
Yeah, Terry Smith is my mentor. When I first moved back here to take the job in the College of Engineering, I lived in his basement for a month until I found a place. Justin King and I are best friends. He was a big reason why I came to Penn State, and his relationship with Tom Bradley and that. And so Terry Smith is that dude, man. And honestly, his development in that cornerback room, speaks bounds to him as a coach, but he's an even better person, man. And folks who have engaged with him. And so I am a champion of Terry Smith. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Lydell, on game day, we have the Letterman's Lounge, or I should say you have the Letterman's Lounge. Lettermen also are on the field with the sideline passes. It's something that we've talked about. There are games where every time you turn around, you bump shoulders with an All-American or a national champion or a Big Ten champion. And that's something, that opportunity that Lettermen have to have field passes, to be on the field on game day. It's not something that you see in a lot of other places. And I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that opportunity that the university and the program gives Lettermen to have those field passes, to be on the field during game day. One, what's the energy like? What's the emotion like for you when you're on the field? And then again, kind of the larger message in that, we want you to have the full game day experience when you come back to Penn State.
It's unlike anywhere else in the country, right? And perhaps there are some institutions and programs that have, I would say copied this structure. But I think back to my times at UCLA, and they were amazed that a former Letterman could just show up the day of the game and get a field pass, right? And how that system works. And it's unique, right? Because as you think about, there's limited space on a sideline, right? Whether it is professional, pros, even high school, right? And there's real parameters as it relates to intrusion on the team and all these things. And so the university is sacrificing that space and allowing the Lettermen to have that space, right? At other institutions, it's not Lettermen, it's donors, right? And so because it really is, it's as close as you can get to the action, right? And so at Penn State, they've been willing and really intentional about saying, hey, this is a place that you built. This is a program you deeply care about. We think that you should have this space in these spaces on the field to cheer on the next generation of football players and the team and the staff. And so a really unique structure. I give my hat off to again, the institution, but also the athletic department, because it is a sacrifice of access from other groups, right? And so these are things that we don't take lightly as a club, and things that we're very grateful for and appreciative. But it is very unique as a player, right? You think of, you showed one of the pictures you showed was Michigan State, and that was that sideline. And so as a player, you're getting pumped up by guys that are in the NFL. You're getting pumped up by Hall of Fame, college Hall of Famers. You're getting pumped up by NFL Hall of Famers. And so that's invigorating, and that's infectious, right? And so, not only are the eyes of people that you want to, you really want to respect and you want to make proud on the sideline, but the eyes of people that can give you encouragement and know the game are there. And so I think that creates a great environment for the players as well as the alumni.
Yeah, it's one of those things that makes game day at Beaver Stadium unlike any other place in the country and probably in the world. I know I'm biased, but that's kind of it's. I think you'll let me say that, Lydell.
No, I'm with you, John. I'm with you. It's unique. Other places they'll say, okay, the high-profile football players can be on the field. Penn State, it's if you played football, right? And so it is unique, John. So you can stand on that.
Summarizing a little bit of the conversation, Lydell, the commitment and the dedication to really a life of service. When we're talking about higher education, giving back to others, and you talked about being in a military family and then coming to Penn State, the mentors that you've had. How did that commitment and that dedication to a life of service, how did that initially develop, and then how have you grown that over the years, including up to now in your current role at Penn State?
Yeah, I say where it stems from is my faith, and for me, my faith in Jesus Christ and the guidance that I was given there in regards to service, right? That's really where it stems from, and then second, then it goes to my family. My mom, dad, and my grandparents, they've always instilled that in me. On my dad's side, he's second, third generation military serviceman, and so service has been a part of my family for a long time. On my mom's side, they're all farmers in South Jersey, right? And there's an aspect of service in that as well, right? You're providing food for other people. And so service is at the core of who I am, right? But then you go into what happened from 18 to 22, and who our mentors were at that time. Coach Paterno really believed in service, right? We were mandated to do community service things. He very much cared about this community. And so all of those things really built into who I am now. I did some things working with the Obama campaign and presidential campaigns there on campus, which was, to me, service, right? And from the political sphere, if you will. And so all those things have really followed me throughout my career, and something that really drives what the things that I do and the things that I enjoy.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Lydell. It was the PSU vote, I believe. When you were a student, you were involved in student voter participation rose by 120%. I believe I read it was a bipartisan organization. And so, I just wanted to follow up on that. Do I have those numbers right?
Yeah, you're correct, right? You think about 2007, you think about the introduction of social media, you think about the flow of information, right? And at that time, a lot of students were registered based on their college application. And so they were not actually able to vote because voting's in November, which is during the academic school year. And so if your parents lived in California, like myself, there's no way I can get to California and vote. And so one of the things was for us, registering students to exercise their democratic right to vote, right? And that was bipartisan, nonpartisan, however you see it. But our main goal was to allow students to register with their address in State College, and allow them to vote. And that was a very special organization that we were able to create and that we were able to develop. And we saw a really transformational impact from that vote. And as you said, over 120%, a voter turnout from students in that election. That was an unbelievable experience for me and something that I was very passionate about. And so, and also a testament to the student body at Penn State, right? For them to not only re-register with a new address, but to also really exercise that right of voting and really doing it, is a testament to the student body we have at this institution.
You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Lydell Sargeant. When we talk about success with honor, the overall student athlete experience, Lydell, you embody that. We have enjoyed talking with you here. We're going to keep you on the call here for another 5 or 6 minutes, if that's okay. Transition to kind of some quick hit questions. Let's get to know a little bit more about you, Lydell. Favorite class at Penn State?
Lori Gravish, who is in the College of Health and Human Development, is my favorite, quite possibly favorite person, but she was really big for me from 18 to 22 in my academic development, but also just a great person and was really created an inclusive environment, an equitable environment, a belonging environment, and is truly just a fantastic human. So Lori Gravish, whatever class she taught, and I think I took a couple of them, I champion her. She is a fantastic person and representation of this institution.
Lydell, my smile is bursting. I am related to Lori Gravish. She is my cousin.
Okay.
So
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. So, all right. Just another. That was.
I think the world of Lori. She knows that because I speak that publicly, and so please pass that along to her.
Oh my goodness! Of course, I'm sort of stunned by that. But yeah, Lori, just superstar human being. Favorite campus spot for you, Lydell?
Favorite campus spot? I would say. Where was my favorite campus spot? Would have to be the Hub. I'd say the Hub, right? Especially, I don't go there now because I'm older, right? But when I was 18 to 22, that's where the food was at. That was where the action, if you will, was at. And so the Hub was the central meeting place for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lydell. I used to go to the Hub all the time when I was a student, and even when I returned home. And now I have to work up a lot of courage to go to the Hub because it is like madness. It is like fun weekend at the Hub all the time.
Yeah, we're officially old, John. We cannot be in that environment. Yeah.
Hey, downtown State College Saturday night. You and your family, you and a couple of your friends. You can get in anywhere. Prime table. Where are you going?
We're going to the tavern. So two things. One, with my family, I'm going to the tavern. Okay. Now, the tavern's changed, lately, but it used to be the place that we would go for official visits. And so Coach Paterno would take us there for official visits. And this is when they had the unlimited sides, right? But also they have one of the well-known escargot dishes. Actually, one of the few places on the East Coast that has this dish. And then if I'm without my family, the Lions Den. That's the activity. That's where the music was of my taste. Chris and the folks that run that there are fantastic, fantastic people, fantastic owners, and so those two places, the tavern and the Den.
The Den. Vince Langaro, our producer, has got to be smiling. Lydell, you are the third straight guest to say the Den when we have asked where folks are going downtown Saturday night. So the Lions Den is like making a comeback this season. It's resonating with a lot of Penn Staters. So you're not alone there, Lydell.
Yeah. Well, as athletes, we're surrounded by music all the time, right? There's music in the locker room. There's music in the weight room. There's music in practice. Right, and so the Den has the best music. Shout out to Pete Butta, who's in New York City doing great things too.
All right, Lydell, I'll ask you, you can kind of choose which way you want to go with this. Either the best piece of advice you ever received or the piece of advice that you would give the 18 version of yourself, the 18-year-old version of yourself.
Control what you can control, right? I think that has been, that has followed me throughout my career, both athletically and professional career, right? When you go into the NFL, there's a lot of things that are out of your control, but your performance is within your control, right? And it's something that Coach Paterno, talked about, and something that my parents talked about quite often. Control what you can control, and if you're productive and efficient and disciplined, things will work out in the end. And so that's something that has followed me. Ignore some of the things you can't control because you can't control them. And so control what you can control, I would say, is the model that I've used the most over the career of my athletic and professional impact.
That is the perfect way to cap our conversation. Lydell, we are so grateful to you for everything that you've done for Penn State over your career. We are thrilled that you are here back at University Park at Penn State at your alma mater. It is always a thrill when we get to see you on campus or at one of our division meetings. We are always here for you if you ever need anything, and wishing you and your family all the best, Lydell. Thanks so much for stopping by the podcast.
Thank you, John. I will, if I can, just give a shout out to you, Vince, and the team as well. Love this podcast. Love all the work you're doing, not only with the football program, but the Alumni Association. And so if I could give a round of applause to you and the team, thank you for your time and everything you do for dear old state.
That means the world coming from you, Lydell. We appreciate it, and we'll pass that along to our colleagues. Thank you, Lydell.
Thank you, John.